Yes. So let me tell you about this very special guest speaker, especially for those of you who may not know him. So Rabbi Jonathan Bernis is a prominent leader in the Messianic Jewish movement worldwide, and he has served in ministry for over 40 years. He is the president and CEO of Jewish Voice Ministries International, which is a global organization whose mission is to proclaim Yeshua the Messiah throughout the world. He hosts a daily television program called Jewish Voice with Jonathan Bernis, which broadcasts to over 575 million homes through local cable and satellite networks as well as online. And he is a passionate supporter of Israel and the author of several books, including A Hope in a Future, A Rabbi Looks at the Last Days, and A Rabbi Looks at Jesus of Nazareth. So Jonathan and his lovely wife, Elisangela, and his lovely daughter, Hannah, are here today, and they have recently moved to the Los Angeles area. And Rabbi Jonathan is also the rabbi at Heritage LA. So please join me in welcoming Rabbi Jonathan Bernis.
L'Shana Tova, everybody. It's so great to be back with you. As I was reciting the Shechechianu today, every time that I recite the Shechechianu since my liver transplant, it has a whole lot more meaning. Preserved my life. It's a whole different prayer for me now. And I'm doing much better than a year ago when I was here. I was still weak. It was just months after my health crisis. And a year later, I'm feeling great, serving the Lord wholeheartedly, and thank you again for your prayers, your continued prayers. They work. Prayer works. So listening to the bio, I've written 7 books, and in all honesty, it's provided about 14 meals over the last 20 years, 14 dinners, and I'm not talking about high-end dinners, just one step above McDonald's. But anyway, I want to share a traditional message today with a little bit of a twist. The Akedah, or the binding of Isaac, has been the sermon theme every Rosh Hashanah afternoon service for decades, if not centuries. And of course, it ties to Yom Teruah, the day of the sound, which the rabbis, I think, rightly connected it to the ram's horn, the blowing of the shofar, which has so many different meanings. It's a call to assembly. It's a call to war, to battle. It's a sound of warning. It's a sound of deliverance. There's so many things connected with Yom Teruah. The biblical feast tells us very little other than assembling ourselves and hearing the sound of the shofar. But I think there's so much more to it. And there's actually, in the Akedah, which logically connects, of course, to the binding of Isaac and the provision of the ram as a sacrifice, there's so much in there that I missed over many years. And I just want to share a few thoughts about it today. The message of the binding of Isaac usually takes one of two directions. It either focuses on the faith of Abraham, or, as I heard over and over again in sermons growing up, the horrific thought that God would require human sacrifice, the cruelty of God, and even a sense of agnosticism, a God who is distant and far from perfect. I heard a lot of those messages. Why would a loving God ask for human sacrifice? And of course, that is not at all what the story is trying to show us at all. It actually is showing us God's provision. It's like Job. If you look at the beginning of Job, there's a consternation that why would God put this dedicated servant through such an horrific experience? But the story of Job is the end of the book, right? It's Job enduring, and he comes out far better than in the beginning as he goes through hardship and challenge. Many believers think that committing our lives to the Lord, following the Messiah, brings us a life of peace and rest and free from conflict and persecution. And yet we were warned by Yeshua that if you follow me, there'll be more persecution, there'll be more conflict, there'll be greater challenge, but greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. And yes, we experience peace, we experience rest, we experience calm and even joy in the midst of trials and tribulations. But it's not a walk through the roses. It's a challenge. And Abraham here is tested. He's challenged with the call to follow God fully and wholeheartedly, as he's done over his walk with the Lord, leaving his family and going to a land, and this is really extraordinary, going to a land that God would show him, future tense. So God's desire is to make of him a great nation, from his offspring a multitude of people greater than the stars of heaven and the sands of the seashore, but with a future demand that he would go to a land that God would show him. And I imagine over many years, Avram at that time, waking up and saying, Lord, which way today? It shows us that faith isn't just one experience. A encounter with God that transforms us is not just one experience, it's continual. One person said long ago that when we have an experience with the Lord that transforms our life, we're saved from the penalty of sin, but then on a daily basis, we're being delivered through the presence of sin and through the power of sin in our lives. And this is an ongoing trial. This is an ongoing challenge to us, a daily challenge. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. I'm sure that most of us have figured that out. I have over 45 years with many ups and downs and challenges and a very near-death experience, but yet seeing God's deliverance, his grace and his mercy. I want to give you some perspectives that I've gained as I've meditated on this text. And of course, it's from Genesis chapter 22. And the NIV particularly begins with the heading, Abraham is tested. And he is. He's tested. But he's not the only one here who is going to be tested. I'm going to read from the TLV, and we have the PowerPoint up. By the way, before that, this is the rendition. I love this picture. I saw it in the Hermitage. I think it's back one. This is the Rembrandt's rendition. I don't know if it was the original in the Hermitage in St. Petersburg. I believe it was. But here you have the aged Abraham covering the eyes of his son Isaac and preparing to slay him, to offer the sacrifice that God has demanded. And of course, he's stopped by the angel. It's an incredible picture. When you see the actual painting, it's remarkable. The interesting thing about Isaac in the painting and in the text, in fact, is that he is not a child. I was taught growing up in Shabbat school that Isaac was a child who was not aware of what his father was undertaking, that he didn't have the cognitive understanding of the sacrifice, that he was only 6 or 7 years old. But in reality, he is grown up. He's strong. He's virile. And according to the rabbis, Isaac at this point is somewhere between 13 and 37. Quite a range. But in the Hebrew, it indicates a teenager, under 20, but at a point of pondering his future, of marriageable age, which probably puts him, according to the Hebrew, at 16, 17, 18 years of age, just under 20. But interestingly, the historian Josephus states that he was 25. I don't know. What I do know is that I was taught incorrectly as a child that he was simply a child, but Isaac was not. So let's look at the text together, and I'll just comment along the way. Begins by saying that God told him, then he said, take your son, your only son whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains about which I will tell you. So this is a test. After these things, it says God tested Abraham and said to him, Abraham. And we hear him responding, here am I. But there's more to it when we look at the Hebrew, which is Hineni. Now, I want to stop there and just talk about this idea of Hineni. There's two words for here am I or here, I'm here. One is po, very simply, I'm here, physically. And then there's Hineni, I'm engaged. And this really came to light, the differentiation between po and Hineni, by my dear friend Jan Moskowitz, who's rejoicing with the Lord right now, and his unpacking of Isaiah chapter 6 with Isaiah. And he gave an illustration that I immediately identified with because I had the same experience. I, of course, was required to go to Shabbat school. I was required to go to Hebrew school. And while my friends were playing baseball or football or having just a great time after school, I was, by requirement, carpooling with my other Jewish friends, my other Jewish hostages, on Tuesdays and Thursdays for 2 hours for 3 years. From age 10 to 13, we were required to go to Hebrew school. And this is a confession. I was not a very good student. I didn't want to be there. I was not engaged. In fact, I was one of 3 of us that would always bring a straw and form spitballs, and the most attentive would get the spitball in the back of the neck. And I remember every Tuesday and Thursday we would begin with roll call, and the names would be read, of course, in Hebrew. I was Yonatan, and the response with most of us was either here, or if we wanted to really excel with our Hebrew, we would say po. And through the roll call of the 20 young men who were held hostage with me, name after name, here, or po. But then there were 1 or 2, and one in particular, Shmulik, that wasn't po. He was the guy with the, I'm going to really date myself now, he was the one with the pocket protector, with the numerous pens on their shirt, with the protractor. You remember that? Those days, some of you are nodding. We really date ourselves. Most younger have no idea what I'm talking about. But they were the studious ones. They were the nerds. They were the nebbish. But they were the ones that were truly engaged. And the 2 of them, particularly Shmulik, who was the best student and brilliant, his bar mitzvah was flawless. I, in fact, was the only student that Mr. Mofsky, our teacher, told me he was very doubtful that I would successfully complete my bar mitzvah. I did by the grace of God because I was motivated to get those fountain pens that followed. Some of you remember that. But he wasn't the Po response. He was the Hinene. He was not just there because his parents required him to be there or his Judaism required him to be there. He was Hinene. He was engaged. He was applied. He was committed. He wanted to be there. And we despised him for it. He was Hinene. I'm here. I'm engaged. And I want to ask you an appropriate question on this first day of the year. Are you a Po follower of Yeshua, or are you a Hinene follower of Yeshua? I'm hearing Hinene. You can say it louder. Hinene. Hinene. I've walked this journey for 45 years, and to be honest, I've had the ups and downs of Po periods of my life, even in ministry. To be honest, I've had Po periods. I have to show up. I'm the leader of the congregation. The funny story of the young man who won't wake up on Shabbat for services, and his mother is urging him to go, and he's saying to his mother, I'm not going to services today. And his mother keeps prodding him, you've got to go to services. And the young man says, why? He says, because people care about you. They love you. He says, well, I don't believe that. I don't care. Well, I'll give you another reason. It's a commitment that you've made before God. He says, I don't care. I'm not going. She says, but there is a reason you've got to go. You're the rabbi. And Jason, I've had those days. We've had those days. I want to be, until the very end, a Hineni believer. Sold out for the Lord, not lukewarm, red hot. And I'll just say that something has changed in me, not just 12 days ago with what happened with Charlie Kirk, which was agonizing for me because I deeply appreciated his ministry. I discovered in 2018 when the Lord started moving me towards a focus on the younger generations, and realized that year, 7 years ago, that was my next assignment. I began to engage with his ministry, and I came to realize that he wasn't a political activist. He was an evangelist, a modern evangelist. And through the later years, that became more and more of a focus on his life. And it wasn't just 2 weeks ago, although there was a profound impact on me. Even before, over the last months, I've been feeling this renewal and this new sense of urgency, this Hineni call that God is going to do something great in the future, in the very near future. And I've moved to L.A. with this strong sense of certainty that God is going to do something great here, that his Spirit is moving in a profound way. And I don't want to be a bystander. I want to catch the wave as early as I can. And that little wave that's growing, I believe, will soon turn into a tsunami. Now, I'm just declaring that that's something that I have in my heart, and I know that many of you may be feeling that. Something is happening. The winds are beginning to change. The wind is beginning to blow stronger, and something is about to happen, and I feel it so strongly, and it's intensifying. Hineni, Lord. Use me. I won't be on the sidelines. I've been at this 45 years, and I've focused wherever the fish are biting. I knew at age 20, after I went to a Bible study and prayed a prayer that my mind didn't really engage in, but I was at a Bible study pursuing a young lady that I was interested in. Some of us have that story, either male or female. And I went for her. And I hated the study. I didn't belong there. I knew I was different. But when the Bible study leader took me upstairs and put a Bible in my hands and began to take me through what in evangelical circles is called the Romans Road, I felt something. I look back now 45 years ago and realize it was the presence of God. And I prayed a prayer, honestly, only to get him to stop pushing me. And I went home, and I thought, I'm never going to go back to that study. This was not a fun moment. But I woke up the next day and had a desire to read the Bible. We're the people of the book. We Jews are the people of the book. But I had never read the book. Yes, I had heard about Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, the heritage of our people. It was drummed into me as a child that I was born a Jew, that I would die a Jew, that we were the chosen people. The problem with that is when I asked the teacher, what are we chosen for? The response was we were chosen to be persecuted. And I thought, that's not something I want to sign up for. And so after my bar mitzvah, I basically fled, other than to take my grandmother to shul on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. That was my duty. But I had no desire to be part of a chosen people chosen to be persecuted. And now we're enduring this attack, this rise of anti-Semitism. And now more than ever, our response has to be Hineni, to get closer to God, to hone our ability to hear his voice and be guided by him. And I think very, very urgently we need to communicate the gospel to our people, because that is the hope of eternal life in the midst of tragedy and danger and persecution. Hineni. Anyway, I knew almost immediately that I was being called into ministry to reach my own people. And the challenge for me was that I had just completed 2 years of business administration, and I just couldn't make that move to this call to ministry. Part of the problem was the only idea of ministry that I understood was the Catholic priesthood. And the idea of celibacy and obedience and poverty was not something that was attractive to me. And so another year of business administration, a third year, knowing that my lifetime call was to serve the Lord. And when I gave in at last, the problem was that every time I tried to outrun God, he was around the corner, everywhere. Gentle, loving, but he was there. And I just couldn't outrun him. I believe in free will, but I also believe that when you're called, God stacks the deck. Some of you might not know that term, but I'm not going to unpack it. Abraham, through years of walking with God, of trusting God, is at the point where he can immediately say Hineni to the hardest request of his life. Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah. That's interesting. Also, Moriah, according to scholars, the place where Abraham took his son, the appointed place, is very likely the Temple Mount, the Mount Moriah being the Temple Mount, and it's very possible, I personally believe it, that the place of sacrifice may have been right on the Holy of Holies, which today, of course, is covered by the Dome of the Rock. I think that it was a very obvious and calculated attempt in the early days of Islam to try to take control of the holiest place, not just the holiest place, but the holiest, the bullseye of God's presence. Or it may also have been the place where Yeshua was sacrificed, where he gave his life for us. Mount Moriah actually continues on the mountain range over to the Mount of Olives. There's definitely a connection here. But he goes to Moriah, and after him there's it says that he's to offer there a burnt offering in this mountain. and I will tell you well. So most scholars agree that Moriah was the site of what is today the Temple Mount, and in fact, the place where Abraham bound Isaac may be that exact spot, either the Holy of Holies or the place where Yeshua actually followed through with the offering of his life. And so let's go on in verse 3, if we can get that slide up. It says, "So Abraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and Isaac his son. He split the wood for the burnt offering and got up and went to the place about which God had told him. Interestingly, on the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from a distance, and then he told the young men that were accompanying him, 'Sit yourselves down here with the donkey. As for me and the young man,'" of course that's talking about Isaac, "'will go over there, worship, and return to you.'" This for Abraham was an act of worship. And then we were told that Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering, and this is really interesting. He put it on Isaac, his son. He put the wood for the offering on Isaac's shoulders to carry. Why? I think because Abraham was frail and Isaac was strong and virile, and he's the one that carries the wood for the offering. The 2 of them, we're told, walked together, and then Isaac asked his father something. "My father," and then he said again, "Hineni, my son." And Isaac asked him this question. Look, here's the fire, here's the wood, but where's the lamb? Now, try to put yourself in Isaac's position here, and it's interesting that messages about Isaac, the focus on Isaac is at his birth, the promise, the miracle of a son through the loins of Abraham and Sarah that is impossible. It's a miracle. The son of promise who will carry on the promise of the land and the peoplehood, and then his old age where he's so blind and so frail that he mistakenly gives the wrong blessing to the younger son, right? We all know that story where there's a trick played against him, and instead of blessing Ishmael, he blesses Jacob, and then realizes the error. It's not an error, of course, but it's done through manipulation, and that's really the focus of Isaac, giving the blessing of the elder son to the wrong son. And we don't really hear much about Isaac in between his birth and his latter life. But I want to point out here that Abraham is not the only hero of the story. For me, Isaac is the hero of the story. This young man who recognizes now that there's something wrong, and yet he keeps walking with his father. I should have used that 2-sided tape, please. Has he forgot? As my father is old, he's forgetful. Has he forgotten the offering? And I think as Isaac is walking, this pit is growing in his stomach. Now let's just talk about Isaac's humanity. He's beginning to realize here that something isn't right. Did my father forget this? You know, I can't quite identify with this, the turmoil that Isaac's going through, other than traveling to India or Africa, a remote place in the world, and waiting for my luggage to come out and realizing it's not coming. Now, that's a much lower level of concern, but let me tell you, in the remote places of the world which I've traveled, it's not fun to realize my luggage isn't here. Somebody forgot my luggage, put it in going to some other place. Did my dad forget the sacrificial lamb? I've been forgetting things as long as I can remember, especially as I get older. You know, I was very well studied as a younger man 30 years ago about the end times and Armageddon. And as people ask me now about Armageddon, I realize I forgot so much of my eschatology, but then I calm myself and realize it's not the end of the world. What do you call a group of forgetful congressmen? An oversight committee. Anyway, enough jokes. Let me get back to where I was. Isaac I believe he's think about this. I believe he's going through some turmoil. His dad is the one that's experienced the faithfulness of God. Abraham is the one that has trusted God, and he's seen which is not seen, the promise, and God has accounted him righteous through that. But Isaac, we don't know about Isaac's faith at this point, and yet he's carrying the wood for the sacrifice, and it's getting closer and closer. Where is the lamb for the burnt offering? And Abraham's reply, again, isn't settling for Isaac. God will provide himself a lamb for a burnt offering, my son. And here's again what's so amazing. The two of them, it says, walked on together. Then they came to the place about which God had told him, and Abraham built the altar there, laid out the wood, and bound up Isaac, his son, and laid him on the altar. Think about how amazing this is. Isaac is realizing that there's not going to be a burnt offering, and he allows his frail father. He could have stopped him. He could have easily overpowered him. He could have outrun his father. He could have actually punched his father out, knocked him out in love, but in self-defense, and then ran. That would be a logical human response. But he allows his father to bind him, and he allows his father to raise the knife. Isaac is the hero of the story for me. It's just stunning. What's going on here? How is Isaac, this young man who has his life in front of him, willing to come to a place where he's allowing his father to take his life? And I just want to offer three things. First of all, it's very obvious to me that Isaac trusts his father. Isaac trusts his father. We don't know how old Isaac was, as I said, when this all took place, but we know he was old enough to carry the wood on his back. Isaac easily could have outrun him or stopped this, but he's seen his father's life. He's heard the stories of God's faithfulness. And he's also seen his father make mistakes. I'm speaking to you younger people. Maybe you have had a really challenging time with your parents or grandparents making mistakes in how they raised you. It's hard to remember the mistakes my parents made. They're both gone, and I remember the good things. But one of the important messages of Rosh Hashanah, of Yom Teruah, and now the 10 days that follow, the days of awe, we begin to inspect our life. We begin to turn inward and be introspective and ask the Lord to begin to reveal things that we need to pay attention to. One of those things is forgiveness, or unforgiveness, rather. And I want to encourage you, parents, be reconciled to your children. Grandparents, be reconciled to your grandchildren. Children, be reconciled to your parents and to your grandparents or to your siblings. This is the time for that. Young people, at some point, you need to make your own decision about what you're going to do with your life. somewhere around this age, teenager years, the covering that's been on you from your parents begins to move away because you come to a place of accountability where you have to make the decision about whether you're going to say hineni to God's call on your life. I really want to speak to those, say, 13 to 35. This is the time to make a decision about your destiny. God is waiting on you. Don't wait on him. Isaac trusts his father. He's seen and heard the stories, and although his father has made mistakes, he decides now to walk this out. He trusts his father. Trust your parents. And don't forget the commandment to honor your mother and father. It will bring you long life. The second thing is that not only does Isaac trust his father, he trusts his father's God. Isaac now is being called on to trust the God of his father, the God of Abraham. And that's why God is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I thought he was just the middle inserted name between the bookends. The great Abraham who heeds the voice of God and follows the demands of God to leave everything. The patriarch of our faith, not only our faith, but of Christians and Muslims as well. And then, of course, Jacob, who wrestles with God, who meets with God, whose name is changed to Israel. And Isaac just segmented or sandwiched in between. And yet Isaac is a man of great faith that we see demonstrated here. He trusts his father's God, just as Abraham makes a decision to obey God. Isaac also makes a decision to trust God, and it's Isaac who's now saying hineni. Not his father, it's Isaac. The story, of course, has a wonderful ending. God stops the sacrifice and provides himself a lamb as an offering. Now, most of you know, since it's fundamental for those who embrace the Brit Hadashah, the new covenant, but for those who may not make the connection, this is a foreshadow, one of the clearest foreshadows of God's sacrifice of his son for us. He stops Abraham from killing his only son, whereas God sends his only begotten son and follows through with the atonement, with the sacrifice. And it happens, Yeshua lays down his life because both Abraham and Isaac trust God. Understand that. This story is what takes us ultimately to the new covenant and Yeshua fulfilling this. But I think most important as I wind down, the third thing is that not only has Isaac trusted his father, not only has Isaac trusted his father's God, but Isaac, I believe, in this moment encounters the Lord himself. And that's different than trusting God. There's a difference between the reality of God being omnipresent everywhere all the time. Get your mind around that. You can't. But he's not only omnipresent, but the real change, the real transformation comes not in God's omnipresence, but in God's manifest presence. When God becomes tangible to us, where we feel his presence, where we are humbled and fall to the ground because we experience his holiness. We touch the holy gods in some way because he becomes manifest to us. And that's why the God of creation is not known as the God of Abraham, but of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I believe the reason that he's willing to lay down his life is that he is experiencing the manifest presence of God. And I want to suggest to you that that's where the transformation comes. And I would urge you over the next 10 days leading up to Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, that you seek the manifest presence of God. That's how hearts are changed. That's how forgiveness comes. That's how a desperation for God comes, not by our might or power, but by his presence, saith the Lord. Greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. And when God manifests his presence in our lives, things change forever. Forever. And it's not just one time. It's not just that 45-year-old experience where I realize now looking back that God manifests his presence and I realized that I was a sinner separated from him. But it's to be a daily occurrence, the Hineni experience, where God changes our heart. It's like a magnet turned the wrong way, we're told, that our mind is repelling the things of God. And through prayer and worship and the reading of the word, the magnet turns until we're attracted again to God. And we're able to truly say Hineni and live for him, encountering the presence of God. As I close, I want to focus this on you young people, 13 to 35 in particular, that are here today. I want you to listen closely to me. We, your parents, we, your grandparents, love you. We've prayed for you and we've wept over you. We want you to experience the God who changed our lives. Don't allow anyone, don't allow peers, don't allow college professors, don't allow cool people that you may look up to, influencers, movie stars. Don't let them rob you of your faith in God. Don't let it happen. And don't let anyone rob you of your identity as a Jewish follower of the Messiah. That's why we've called our community Heritage, because heritage matters to God. Your Jewish identity matters to God, and there's thousands of believers who don't identify as Jewish but would say, yeah, my mother's Jewish, I'm not, my father's Jewish. And I would say to them, you have a heritage, both in Messiah and as a physical descendant of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Don't allow arguments that sound good to convince you without asking God to show you the truth, because the world will try to rob you of your faith. But I want to say to you, God is real. And without faith, it's impossible to please him. Thank God for Isaac, a hero of our faith. Thank God for Isaiah, who as a young man met God in the temple and experienced a manifest presence moment with God. And his lips were touched and he became the greatest prophet of our people. Don't let another day pass, young people, without asking God to reveal himself to you. For those of you that have made that commitment, don't get caught up on the internet with endless information and data, but seek wisdom and knowledge. We're bombarded with information and data. It's enough. It's clogging our mind. Empty it out and receive wisdom and truth and knowledge from the Lord. That's what we were designed for. Lord, I pray that as we enter now these 10 days of awe leading up to Yom Kippur, that we would all in this room have a transformational experience with your manifest presence that grabs a hold of our heart and brings us to a place where we truly forgive, where we truly hunger and thirst after righteousness, where we come to a place where we realize fully that it's no longer us who lives, but the Messiah who lives in us. B'Shem Yeshua, and we all say together, Amen, Amen. L'Shana Tova.